Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm Marquita here with Late Nights Early Mornings, and today I'm going to be doing a book review on a book by Tiffany D. Jackson called Grown. Now, Grown is a young adult novel. For those who don't know or that might be new here, welcome. I am a former special education English teacher and reading specialist. So I love to read. And of course, my last 4 years of my teaching career, I was working at the high school setting. So I read a lot of young adult books. And I personally am a fan of young adult books. Even though they are written specifically for that audience, a lot of times the things are still relatable. I actually had a chance to see Tiffany D. Jackson speak at one of our professional development opening days. She was the speaker, and one of the reasons she was speaking, she was kind of talking about how she got to where she is as an author because she did have, I believe it was ADD or ADHD in school. And so she talked about the impact of teachers and how that motivated her. And I want to say it was more so how she had teachers who didn't believe in her or didn't think she would be successful just as a student. So when you think about like a person with ADHD or ADD, sitting down and writing, sometimes it may seem a little bit unbelievable. So I think that her story, if I remember correctly, was a couple of years ago. Really a little longer than that now, but about 4 years ago plus. I want to say that she was saying that she used that negativity to kind of be her motivation, almost like a, I told you so, or to prove them wrong. So it was nice to see her speak. And again, she's also a Howard University alum, as am I. The degree is right there behind me over my head. That was not planned, but it just happens to be where I am. I'm sitting in my living room, and yes, that particular expensive behind degree is on my wall. And so getting into this book, Grown, I remember when it was first released and kind of reading the summary on what it was about, and I was really excited. One thing that I really appreciated is that this particular character, given the plot of the story, the typical character that you would think of would be probably a child or a person. She's a teenager from maybe a broken home, from maybe a not so healthy or stable home environment. However, that is not Enchanted's background, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But that was one of the things I was appreciative of, because I think that when we talk about representation in stories and just representation in general, when you see certain outcomes, you tend to think, okay, well, this person kind of had this background or whatnot, and then they have this expected outcome. Whereas someone else, you might say, well, they had this type of background, and so this is the expected outcome for them. And Enchanted's situation or her story, it's kind of the opposite. And so I love that that is the case, because I think it, one, brings awareness to the fact that regardless of the situation, like people from every walk of life can end up in certain types of situations, even when you may think that because they have a certain type of upbringing or a certain type of background, that wouldn't be the case. And I also love that there are a lot of comparisons in this book that show kind of like the good and the bad, or a pro and a con, or healthy versus unhealthy. So you kind of see both of those sides play out in different aspects of the book. And I think that's also a good thing, because it kind of helps us see, like, not everything that's like this is bad, or not everything like this is good. So you kind of get to see a good mix of things. And I'll give you some more examples as I get more into what this book is about. I'm just going to read what's on the back here. It says, when legendary R&B artist Corey Fields spots Enchanted Jones at an audition, her dreams of being a famous singer take flight, until Enchanted wakes up with blood on her hands and zero memory of the previous night. Who killed Corey Fields? So in the book, Corey Fields is a successful R&B artist. So thinking about in real life, we would think maybe like on Usher level, Neo, Bruno Mars, that type of situation. Someone who has had a very long career, really has some pull in the industry, been in the game for years and years since they were probably like a teen or a preteen, and now they're into adulthood. They've won many awards, big influences. They have that type of career. So just kind of legendary for a young person. And so Enchanted ends up going to an audition similar to think of like The Voice or American Idol, something like that, where you have celebrity judges that you get to perform in front of, and you're trying to win this competition. So it's also televised, and so Enchanted ends up getting a spot at this audition. And she's the last person to perform. And Corey Fields comes in shortly before she gets ready to perform, and he gets to see her audition. Now, we know that those shows, a lot of times, one of the big things is the fact that you get exposure to the industry, even if you don't end up winning like the contest or whatnot. So Enchanted performs, and one of the things that draws Corey's attention to her is that the fact that she sings an old school song. Because of course she's young, she's 17. So the fact that she's singing this soulful old school song, but then also the way that she's singing it, it's like, anybody can sing a song, but some people just have that ability to really make you believe. It's almost like they're telling that story. And so she kind of gives that vibe. Corey gets that vibe off her. And so he feels like, he sees potential there. And so he wants to work with her and help her, improve on her areas where he feels like she needs to get a little stronger, and then also just help her become a star, which is her dream. She wants to be a singer. That's her dream. So he enters the scene, pretty early in the book, and we see how they end up getting acquainted through this audition. So he even wins her parents over, because her parents are not the type to be like, oh, like the celebrity person wants to work with my daughter. Here you go, like go work with him. They are very cautious. They are hesitant about the fact that he's a 28-year-old man and she's a 17-year-old girl. They are very cautious about that when they first start working together. Her parents, the studio's at his house. Her parents stay in the vicinity or either on the property. Corey makes it very clear that he doesn't want to be interrupted in those studio sessions with Enchanted. So they're only allowed to be on the property or close by. He doesn't allow them to come in the studio. He uses his assistant, Jessica, who is a female, to kind of run interference and keep that from happening. So that's kind of the beginning of how their relationship starts to develop, in terms of, he's working with her in the studio and they are creating music, and he is actually, helping her improve on her craft. And so the other thing that starts to happen is that they begin communicating, like when she's not working with him, she's still going to school and all of that. He's texting her, they're FaceTiming when she's at school, when she's home, just like, when teenagers or anybody else communicate. He's doing that, but the thing is, he's a 28-year-old man, and he's not communicating with her about music related. It is music related, and he kind of shapes it in that sense where it's kind of like, if you look at it, it looks innocent, or he could easily play it off and say, well, we were sharing songs or we were talking about music. But then he starts to talk to her about just regular everyday life, which again, not necessarily anything wrong with that. He's learning about her. He's learning about her family. He's learning kind of about her life in terms of her family structure, that she has siblings. He kind of gets those vibes. He's getting this information, but he's also giving her information about himself. He does share, about his childhood and all of those things. And he talks a lot about, how they are very similar in a sense. And so he's really building that bond and connection with her, which at first seems somewhat innocent, but we see how that he uses some of that information as a form of manipulation later on in the story. The other thing that we see in this book is that Enchanted is not a naive girl. She's not just so starstruck that she doesn't think about what is going on or put that into perspective. So she is cautious of the fact that, he's a 28-year-old man communicating with her, a 17-year-old, even though she will be 18 within a few months. So she kind of uses that as a way to justify the potential for a real relationship, like a romantic relationship, not just in the music industry, because she starts to feel like he's flirting with her or that he's sending her those vibes. But some part of her is like, well, maybe I'm just reading too far into it, because he's Corey Fields, like he's this big artist. He can have any woman he wants. So why would he want me, a 17-year-old girl? He's a 28-year-old man. But she starts to really feel like he is flirting with me. He's, really sending these signals that say like, hey, I'm interested in actually forming a real relationship, not just in the music sense. So even though she's communicating with him and everything, she doesn't tell her parents. So whenever he texts her or FaceTimes her, if her parents are around, she'll either go to a different room or she just won't respond. Like if it's a FaceTime, she will, decline it if her parents are nearby or whatnot. When it comes to the text, she tries to play it off as if she's texting one of her friends. So that says to me that she's aware that there's a questionable piece to that. Like she knows, like, okay, if my parents knew I was talking to him, just having regular conversation, not about music, they would probably feel some kind of way. So that lets me know that she is very well aware that there is a level of inappropriateness there. But again, she's justifying it, and you'll see throughout the book she does this. She will, her red flags, her spidey senses will say, hey, something's wrong here. Red lights flashing, alarm bells going off. And what she does is she's like, okay, I hear you, but, and she finds ways to justify those things. So that is something that I think is important, and I'm glad the author created Enchanted's character like that, because a lot of times we look at women or young girls that end up in these situations and you think, are you really that naive? Did you really think that this person was not or did not have ill intentions, or how could you not see, what was happening? And it's easy to do that when you're on the outside, or even for the person who has experienced it, when they look back on it, it's easy for them to say, you know what, I saw where this was happening, that was happening, that was my, these were things that I missed, or these were signs that this was kind of going left, or this was inappropriate. But when they're in the moment, either you don't see it because you don't want to, or you do see it and you choose to believe that what you know to be true is not really what you think it is. Like you choose to kind of make yourself believe that it's not really happening. I would want to think that that person really has bad intentions, especially when they have offered to help you. Like you didn't go to them, they came to you and said, hey, let me help you out. And so who wants to think that that person who could be your way to, your door to your dream is someone who really has ill intentions? So I think with Enchanted, that's what we see. She's not the naive girl who just doesn't see it coming. She chooses to ignore all the warning signs because she doesn't want it to be so. As we become adults, those age gaps don't really play that big of a role. Like once you're 18, once you're grown, you're legal, you could be with somebody that's 28, 48, 58, whatever floats your boat. Now, yeah, people will have things to say. And if it's a young girl with an older man, a much older man, they might think, oh, she's just after his money, sugar daddy, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to say he's a predator because she's grown. And she is legally supposed to be able to make those decisions on her own. And the same thing with him, he's grown. So Enchanted kind of uses the fact that she's going to be 18 soon as the way to say it's okay that he's communicating with me in that way, because he knows that I'm almost 18. And so if he really wanted a relationship with me, it would be something that could be possible very soon, and it would be appropriate, at least legally. So though you'll see her throughout the book kind of rationalize things that really she knows are questionable. And she does have a best friend named Gabby, who Light Enchanted is different at their school in the sense of she's Hispanic, and in their school is predominantly white. So her and Gabby are the only, or kind of one of the few minority people there. So that's part of how they become friends and they click. And even though Gabby is Hispanic, she has more of the white features, or she's a lighter Hispanic. So she could, if she wanted to, kind of blend in more with the white culture. Like she could assimilate a lot easier than Enchanted could. Because no matter what Enchanted does or how she behaves, or whatever, she's a dark-skinned black female. So she can't blend in the same way that her friend Gabby could if she wanted to. However, Gabby is not that girl. She is like, I am Hispanic, I am not white, and I ain't trying to be white. And so that is kind of how they click, because they're both very strong, talented, smart young women who are minorities in a predominantly white setting. And so they kind of bond over all of those things. She's actually the reason why Enchanted even went to the audition that she ends up meeting Corey at to start with. So that comes back into play later on. But Gabby also has a relationship with a boy who's in college. And so they started dating when Gabby was younger. And so people kind of looked at that as, maybe he's dating her for the wrong reasons because she's this young, naive girl and he's an older guy. However, their relationship is actually a healthy relationship, and he's not using her. He's not manipulating her. They truly are in love. Enchanted also uses that as an example of, when she's considering again the potential relationship with Corey. She's like, the age difference thing, again, she's 17, he's 28. Thinking about that, she's kind of like, but look at their relationship, and it worked out. And even though people, had said what they had to say about it, they proved them wrong. And so again, she's justifying all of these things that she knows somewhere in her mind that, like, no, that's not okay. But she's making them okay. So it's good to see that, but we do start to see her come through those realizations. And speaking on that, we see the barriers that are created for many reasons as to why it's hard for her to even come forward, and why it may have even taken her longer to come forward, because of the barriers that Corey knew were in place. Some he set in place, and some are societal that are in place. And so these are all things that she has to overcome, as well as the fact that she does have on her side a friend who's also kind of in that same music industry. He has a connection in the music industry, and he sees her. He sees her with Corey. He sees her as someone like the, parties and stuff they go to. And he knows that there's something not right. He realizes, because he knew her before she was with Corey, and he kind of knows her, and he's seeing things that are kind of raising red flags in his mind. So he ends up helping her in a way. And so we see that. And so that's the good thing, is that there was somebody there to stand up and to help Enchanted. Not to say that she couldn't have helped herself, but having him kind of first see something was wrong played a role in her success when she tried to, voice what was going on. So I think that goes back to the whole protect Black women situation, because she had someone who was willing to take some risks, putting himself out there because he was connected within the industry, and doing what he did could have been damaging to his career, could have ended his career, or potential for a career, because he was young like her. And he was trying to grow in a different way within the industry. So he put all of that on the line to save or to help a friend. And I think that that's also important, just having someone who's willing to, stand up for you, or to at least back you, support you, whatnot, when you're going through those situations. And also, she's still, there is something to note with her and Gabby, even though typically Gabby would be that girl. We see that Gabby goes MIA for a little while, and we see how that plays out and how that ties into the story as well. There's also a curveball at the end that with one of the characters. I'm not going to say who it is, because I love the way that curveball was thrown in there. And it had me thinking and second guessing, because you think you know how it's going to end. And then that curveball comes along. You're like, wait a minute. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't counting on that at all. So I love that part and how that was thrown in there. And lastly, we want to get to the part about the murder. So we know, as the back of the book, the little summary tells us, the question on the back says, who killed Corey Fields? And so we know that somewhere along the line, Corey ends up dead. And the question is, who did it and why? And so that's part of the story as well. And I think that ties into everything. Of course, we know who the natural suspect would be given the plot of the story. Is it enchanted? Was it enchanted? And if so, why? So that's something to try and figure out. We tie in to the romantic piece. We tie into her, kind of having that moment of reflection and the impact of what she went through as well. So I love the way this character has been developed throughout the book. I like the overall messages that come from the book, as particularly the one, again, to support and protect Black women. Just one last thing, which will be a little bit of a trigger warning. The book does mention or have a couple of instances of abuse, physical abuse, as well as, I guess you could say, domestic violence, and then also slight bit of sexual, but very, very PG. Like, it is still a young adult novel, so definitely not explicit at all. Just enough to let you know something was going down. And when it came to the abuse, again, just to know so you could understand what was happening in the story. But just wanted to put that out there in case that is a sensitive subject for anyone who may potentially want to read the book. It's not something that happens throughout the book, not the majority of the book at all, just a few spots here and there. So thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Until then, see you next time.